This morning, Dominic Perrottet looked very uncomfortable on 2GB with Ben Fordham. He was questioned by a caller, former paramedic John Larder, about the jab mandates. Why haven't they dropped? And Dominic Perrottet, I've never seen him want to avoid a question more than this one. He admitted in the answer that jabs do not stop at transmission. Not a huge admission, we've sort of seen that the last few months, but it was quite astounding to see how little power the Premier actually has and how powerful the bureaucracy has become. This is what that looked like.
Okay, John's got a question about vaccine mandates. We've been around this road many times. Hi, John.
G'day, Ben. G'day, Premier. John Larder. I'm a SAC paramedic, 25 years. My wife's also an emergency nurse with a master's degree in clinical teaching. We're down in Sydney today at the Industrial Relations Commission with Shane Princess, and AFL solicitors, trying to get her job back. Police are still mandated out of jobs. SES volunteers, I can't even fill a sandbag. Fire rescue. Doesn't it seem disingenuous, Premier, that you're offering through health $10,000 sign-on bonuses for nurses to get back into the industry, and my wife and I can't even work. My job hasn't been replaced as a paramedic in Tumut. It's an absolute disgrace.
John, I've made it very clear, and I couldn't have been clearer to the public service here in New South Wales, to end vaccine mandates, and the majority across the public service have done so. I've also made it very clear to the private sector and worked closely with them of ending vaccine mandates. And the reason I've done that has been...
But they haven't listened to you. What he's telling you is they're not listening to you. And I saw you throw your head back in frustration when the words vaccine mandates came out of my mouth and out of John's mouth. You understand the frustration here, but as Premier of this state, you don't have the power to make this happen.
I have the power in certain areas of the public service, Ben, and I've made that very clear, and they have reduced those vaccine mandates. I don't have power in the private sector, but I've actually spoken to leading employers across the nation, across the state, when I became Premier, for those vaccine mandates to be removed for the simple reason there is no evidence. There is no evidence that the vaccine stops transmission.
How humiliating would it be to work your whole life to become the Premier of this state, have the power seemingly to be able to run the state, and then you have someone else who says, no, I'm not going to follow what the Premier is saying?
There are certain areas in the public service where I do not have that power.
It's crazy.
And in addition to that...
and meanwhile, we need nurses in hospitals, we need firefighters out there battling bushfires, and they're sitting on the sideline.
Well, Ben, I've made it abundantly clear what my position is on this, and it's based on evidence. There is no evidence that vaccines in the current environment have any impact at all on transmission of COVID. I could not be clearer.
So just repeating that, vaccines have no impact when it comes to COVID transmission.
And in addition to that, there are areas in the public service, just to John's question, there are areas in the public service prior to the pandemic where certain vaccines were required for employers, a lot of them in a health setting. And so what I have made it very clear to the public service is that's the point we get back to. So where vaccines were required for a number of reasons in a workplace health and safety scenario, that we go back to that. But there is no evidence in the areas of the public service that I can make that direction. I have, and it has been enacted. And I've also worked very closely with the private sector who have followed my position in relation to this issue.
So I just got off the phone with John Larder, and he made the point to me that he was on his way to that tribunal during that phone call. And when they're at the tribunal, his representative made the point that Dominic Perrottet, on that segment we just watched, came up. And he said, isn't this just madness? The fact that even the Premier admits, the head of this whole bureaucracy, that the jab does not stop transmission. So what are we doing here? When John said that to me, I just thought that was really cool. The fact that John made the call and it was an additional bit of evidence that came up in the tribunal. This is madness. It needs to end. The fact that we're still talking about it is ridiculous. John's an absolute legend. If you really like what he's doing, please give him a share and get this video out there because we're winning.